Dear Rentals Club members, thank you for joining. This next video is with Pierre Becerril, who's the founder, CEO of Transparent Data. Transparent Data is a company that's able to give you, in your market, data about short-term rentals, patterns, bookings, cancellations. I thought about bringing Pierre here today because we talk a lot about trends, things happening, what you should be doing, which is good advice in general, but I think what's really important for each of us is really to see what's going on in the general market, right? We all probably have seen cancellations or new patterns of bookings going down, but what's it like in your own market? What's it like around the world? And what's very interesting as well, as sitting in Europe, for example, we've seen this wave coming from Asia, then hitting Europe, now hitting the US. So looking at these different waves, how they're playing out, and maybe what you can think of what's going to happen in the future for us is very interesting. So once again, I'm welcoming Pierre here on this video.
Hi Thibaut, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. And as I was saying, maybe a quick presentation of Transparent, your company.
Sure. So we're basically a benchmarking company, and we're trying to help property managers around the world understand better supply, competitors, occupancy rate, and help them, optimize their revenue by taking informed decisions.
So as everyone can see, I'm right now sitting at home because we're confined. I think it's the same for you. Where are you talking from today?
So I'm in Madrid. The company is based in Madrid. So we're around 30 people here, all of us working from home. Madrid is one of the most impacted city in Europe. So we know firsthand, how bad the situation is and how it's impacting everyone professionally and personally as well.
So it's very interesting to see you today because you have this perspective, like humanly feeling this for you, for your friends, family, and your own company, and you also have this overall view of the market. And what I've been very impressed by is this page you've put out on your website. So maybe tell us about this. You have created this resource for vacation rental owners and managers to have more information about the impact of the COVID-19 on the markets.
Sure. Yeah, we basically decided to try to gather as much information as we could in one place. So we're going to keep updating that a lot. Obviously, we've just started. We put it out last week, and we're going to keep updating it with general market trends. Everything is for free, and the idea is really give some clarity about which direction is this taking. I think everyone feels the market now is being destroyed, to say it like this. But the important part here is, when it starts to pick up again, to be aware, to know how fast, so we make sure we don't leave money in the table then, because this is not a year where we can afford to leave any money on the table. None of our business, for sure.
That's great. So maybe we can, without further ado,
Sure.
maybe actually show this page, this resource to people who are watching, and they can of course access it for free on your website. So I'll let you basically walk through it and maybe ask you a couple of questions along the way.
Sounds good. Yeah, can you see well the screen now?
Yes.
Great. So it's accessible on ctransparent.com on the main page. There's a pop-up that guides you there. Again, the idea is we're just going to put some resources on that page, and as things evolve, going to keep updating it. So now it's the version. Normally Monday and Tuesday, we're going to have some more updates. What we really wanted to show here is that this is a global crisis, right? This is going to be one of the worst crises of the last few decades, at least. And we need to be prepared for it. We need to be aware. And what we hope here is that we can see, signs when things gets better. So, on this crisis, we're on the front line again. And I wanted to show that, so obviously we've got some timeline of events with some relevant events for the travel industry with a general count, so we can keep track of the general situation. But I want to start maybe by sharing this chart that we prepared, where we are looking at the evolution of the OTA's stock price. So we're looking at Expedia, TripAdvisor, Booking.com here compared to the NASDAQ. This is important. Why? Because in short-term rental, there is no company as of today that are listed in the stock exchange, but there are these companies that operate in vacation rentals. And I think it's a good sign of how the market is evaluating the impact of our industry, right? So I've never looked so often at the stock market as last week, probably trying to understand, how the market is discounting this negative impact on the companies that, we all work with. So just to give you an idea here, Expedia is down to 43% of the value they had at the beginning of January. It's a massive decline. If you look at the Nasdaq is at 79% of what it was at the beginning of January. So out of March 13, $41 billion got destroyed, basically, with this sort of crash of the different OTAs. So we can imagine, the impact it has on these large companies, how it can impact us, having much less reserve, much less capacity to rebound, right? So it's just to give a general view of the market.
And what's interesting as well, you can really see, I think, the dip around March 12, 14, linked to the travel ban in the US, right?
Correct. So exactly. So there's the travel ban is, for instance, very affected, Expedia. And in general was the signal that, officially the travel industry is completely shut down for a few weeks, if not months, basically. And from there, the market has continued to discount more value to these companies.
Okay.
So yeah, we will continue looking at it, but I think what's interesting is to see if there is any rebound or anything like this, and continue tracking how the market is expecting these companies to behave financially. And the next page here is a bit more close to us. So it's a chart we put together a few days or even weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, about the global demand on short-term rentals. So this chart right here is the occupancy. I'm just going to zoom in here. Is the occupancy globally on short-term rentals? Okay, looking at millions of properties around the world. This is not weighted by any region. Basically, it's just the picture of the global demand. So you can see we started the year, slightly lower. There's some delay due on the day of the week, and here you can see that really in February. So basically, the x-axis here is the number of days in the year. The blue line here is the occupancy last year, and the green line here is the occupancy this year. Until that point, going forward, it's the occupancy that is already reserved today for the days to come. Okay, so what you can see here is that's when really the drop happened, was basically February. And if you look at this by country, which is the following chart right there, you can see how it impacts is different. But maybe just high level, on February, we dropped 23% our occupancy versus last year, and this was as of, if I remember well, 10th of March. So we're not even close to that now. It's much worse. But basically, it gives you an idea of how bad the situation has escalated globally in such a short period of time. Maybe Thibaut, I wanted to show as well the country by country analysis. So you can see how China occupancy was impacted. 20% less occupancy in January this year versus last year. The months after was double, 40%. And March was even worse with 60%. And you can imagine the rest might be a lot of as well, no shows and things that have ended up being canceled with the new, cancellation policies that we've seen in the market. So this path, that we've seen in China, we can see it started in Italy with very, very impacted. Italy, I think, was impacted maybe 1 week to 10 days before the rest of European countries. And, the rest is obviously following up here. So for everyone to be ready and prepare in time of crisis, the worst you can do is not do anything. You need to react fast. And really, I think this is to tell you, prepare for a very bad month ahead, because we've seen that happen to China. And, it's better to be over prepared than under prepared in these conditions. Yeah.
So, and if I recap here, what we see is that basically this drop by, let's say, around 20% happened in China in January and started happening in Europe and the US in March. So it's very hard to predict the future, but what you say, there's like a 2-month gap into what we see. So you can only maybe imagine what's going to happen if it does follow the pattern of China, that April would, of course, could be even worse than March for us if it does like in China, right?
Indeed. I mean, this does not reflect a lot of cancellations that occurred after and things like this. So, you know, the market effectively is basically paused. So this is what we're seeing here. There's very, very little demand. You know, I've got clients I talk to every day. They're telling me, you know, they got hundreds of properties, but yet they get maybe 2, 3, 4 reservations per day when, you know, they used to see obviously a lot more. So maybe if that makes sense, we could transition to the cancellation to see what we see on cancellation. So I've got this chart that we haven't really loaded yet, but I wanted to give you a small preview. This is here a ratio that we've created to track the trends in cancellation. So what we did here is we look at the pickup. The pickup is, you know, how much inventory is taken off the market, either blocks or reservation, or how much inventory is put back into the market. So new properties, or in this case, cancellations. So we made a ratio of the negative pickup, if you want, the inventory that is coming back to the market, divided by the positive pickup. So normally when things are okay, you know, we're around 20% is what we see in terms of ratio of how much is getting put back versus what is getting withdrawn. And you can see here in Europe, starting February 25th, how the trend, you know, started changing and basically going up towards almost total cancellation. So we're getting here to a point where now 140% of the movement we see are basically inventory going back to the market. And what's interesting, and we were discussing a bit earlier, Thibaut, is you can see that there is a delay between what happened in Europe already and what is happening in North America and South America. And the lines are basically parallel, which is what is worrying here, is that, you know, like you said, it's hard to predict, but one could assume that, you know, if things continues like this, there will be the same pattern where a lot reservation will be canceled. And obviously, you know, different markets being impacted differently. This is the average for the peers, so it'd be interesting to filter by date here. But you can see, you know, eventually the market is highly correlated with the number of cases confirmed, and the market the most affected, you know, right now in Europe, obviously, Italy, Spain, complete shutdown. You know, in Spain, I think yesterday they basically shut down officially short-term rental. So it's now illegal to do short-term rental during the state of emergency here, following up the fact they did the same for hotels. So basically, you know, it's no business for a few weeks at least.
I think you're touching on a very good point, and we looking at this graph again that shows that a lot of availability has been re-released on the markets, right? At the moment, obviously, where there's travel bans or even where short-term rental is illegal, obviously it's not getting booked again. And you're right to mention that. And in lots of countries, it is happening, the fact that it's turning illegal. I'm thinking of the Czech Republic, Poland, in the US, for example, the state of Florida as well. I think they have a ban starting that's forbids not just hotels, but also vacation rentals, which is interesting to me as well. It's like where are going the people who are right now in short-term rentals? It's who are there. It's an interesting topic as well to see operation is going to be happening, but it's definitely a sign that yes, there's probably a lot of availability around, but not many people in some areas who can actually book because it's just not legal.
Exactly.
Interesting to see.
So, and you know, at the end, I think this is going to have an impact on how we, you know, get back to the demand side. And I think this chart is interesting. So this is our estimation of how are the cancellation policies, as an example on Airbnb here, around the world. So, you know, right now around 40% is flexible, and the rest is somehow moderate or strict. And this is the picture now, but I think this probably will change because most people will have to adapt to the fact that we're in complete uncertainty and we don't know if we'll be able to travel in 3 months from now. You know, I don't know if I'll be able to take a plane in June. I have no idea. And I think that's something will be reflected. So we wanted to take this snapshot of how are the cancellation policy now, and we're going to keep refreshing that to see how people are differently, reacting and opening a little bit their cancellation to get this reservation for the longer term.
So what people will be able to see when they come back to your page, that this 39%, almost 40% of hosts that have a flexible policy, this number would probably shrink, or has shrunk already dramatically, or stronger.
I think the flexible part will raise. So the strict policies, will make less and less sense. And I think what we can jump to a chart I was preparing for one of our clients in Mallorca, showing how the occupancy looked like this year versus last year. So you can see here there's a huge spike in demand. This is because there's been a marathon in the island. That's why there's a spike in demand. And here you can see what was on the book. So basically the reservation that were already made at the same time last year are the one in blue, and this dotted orange line is the reservation that are made so far for the rest of the year. And you can see here these two, if you want, pick here, and these compression times are Easter holidays that are quite popular in Spain, and especially for that destination. So you can see that we're lower than where we were last year, but it's not completely dead. So people are still hoping somehow they can go on holiday in April and go to their holiday house or whatever they've reserved. And here you've got the summer season that is quite in line with where we were last year. So what we're taking away from that is some markets still have the demand for the high season, for instance. But I think to get this extra demand, we'll have to probably adjust cancellation policy to make sure people are confident, because now we're not even sure the airport will be open or the ferries will be open to go there, right? So that's one thing. But the other good positive sign here is that the demand is not completely dead, and we're in similar level as last year for now, right? So that's, I think, a positive sign.
So again, looking at this market in Spain, the island of Mallorca. So again, it's like a very interesting sneak peek into the books, right, of the property managers. And exactly right, is that talking when the snapshot was made, which I think was a few days ago, right? The snapshot,
it was 19
August, is basically in the books of the property managers. Bookings are where they were last year, right? And so far it's not touched yet, but you're right. It's very uncertain. We don't know, especially for the coming weeks. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Correct.
Thanks for sharing.
Just that's what we see in some markets, and maybe the bigger picture is, as an industry, is looking at the supply. The supply is how much of us are doing this activity on the different market. And we come from, as you all know, a period of very, very fast growth. And this is the growth from February 19 to February 2020. So for instance, China grew 40% the amount of properties that were listed on Airbnb, Booking, TripAdvisor,
wow, and
the HomeAway group, Vrbo. So we're come from a period of strong growth. Even market like France 13%, US 10%, where this industry has been going for years, and these markets are very, very, very mature. But despite that, we're still at a significant growth, especially if you compare to the hotel supply that's growing much less. So right now we haven't seen a shift. This inventory is not yet gone away. It's still there, at least as of February, but we'll keep tracking to see if people are taking off their property. And one thing that I've seen is that a lot of properties are now appearing on long-term rental sites. So, we're looking at our friends here in Spain, for instance, on the main portal, are basically having a lot more properties out there. I was seeing the same thing was happening in Ireland this morning. And, I'm having a look at the US, France, and a few other markets where I've got some data there as well. And I can see, there will be a trend, most likely, for people trying to navigate through this crisis by, putting inventory on long term, which is going to have a lot of impact on a lot of different ways, because, people need to pay their loan if they got a loan for their house, and they need to get some revenue.
So for the moment, supply grew a lot. For the moment, obviously, we need to refresh that. But you're right, some supply may be taken away by people who are
Yes.
Won't go long term. As we said, also looking at data, it's really well said here. It's obviously data for entire homes only. So this is not even taking into account the people who are sharing a place on Airbnb, right? You're really talking about
Yeah.
vacation rentals and urban short-term rentals. So it's the growth was staggering these last years. Very interesting to see as well. Yeah.
Correct. And maybe just here we made just an overview of how much inventory is in each of the countries. So these numbers are already interesting to put in perspective versus, how many household is in each country, because it gives you a proportion of how many people or how many of the properties are used for short-term rental. We've got we made a publication on that with the Skift magazine recently. But what's interesting to see is that, the most affected markets are among the top 10 vacation rental platforms. About the top 10 vacation rental markets in terms of countries. So naturally, our industry is going to be super impacted because, this is where the epidemic is happening and this is where the supply is. So as a consequence, there will be an impact globally on all the companies.
And that's a great graph as well, great table, because as you just show, there's obvious short-term rental, vacation rental market that we think of, like we think of France, Italy, Spain, but Germany is a big one as well, because Germany is a big market for short urban rentals, for example, also vacation rentals. So it's being hit as well. And there's a lot of domestic travelers, I think, as well in Germany, but so I think you also have things to say about domestic travel. I think it's a good segue, but to talk about this.
Yeah, sure. We can maybe jump to the domestic travel. Let me find it right there. So one way we think that there is some opportunities to the recovery is obviously domestic travel, right? We have uncertainty around traveling far. We don't know about airlines, about group travel and all of these things. But what we can imagine is that people after being locked down for 45 days, they will be willing to go out and probably see something else and take the car most likely and reach out some domestic destinations. So in this chart, we wanted to show the darker the country is, the more domestic the market is. And here we made sort of the ranking, so you can see which are the markets that are naturally more prepared to recover because they already have a lot of domestic travel, and the ones that will have to develop domestic travel. So again, I'm here in Spain, but I can imagine in the next few weeks, people will just be tired of being locked down, and there will be an opportunities for property managers. I think for two reasons. First one is the hotels are shut down. Our colleagues from the hotel industry are also experiencing really, really hard times. But naturally, a hotel when it's shut down, it takes a little bit more time to reactivate. You need to find all the staff, and basically you need to put everything back in place. And this takes a little bit more time than what we could do, opening a few properties and maybe slowly scaling back. So I think we have got the first advantage is we can reopen faster. The second probably advantage we have is if we are able to advertise the fact that we're very mindful about hygiene and basically promote the fact that we're dealing actively against potential contamination in our properties, we will be able to get people reassured. Because what would you prefer, be stuck in a hotel with 100 rooms and you don't know who are the neighbors, or a nice short-term rental that is a bit more isolated? So I think there was an opportunity here to recover the domestic travel. And there will be things we need to do, like promoting really well that after every checkout we leave maybe 3 days, maybe 2-3 days, empty the house before we do the cleaning even. So we know that the people say that the virus dies after maybe 24 hours, maybe 48 hours if it's on cardboard. It's not sure, there's different numbers, but to be safe, we leave 3 days empty after checkout. Then we clean, with very, with disinfectant and things like this, and then we can reopen. I think this will give people confidence, and probably we will be able to get the first demand for travel after these basically no travel days.
That's two great points. Again, the ability for vacation rentals in some zones to areas to reopen before hotels. As you may know, I have properties in the Caribbean, and we were hit very hard by Hurricane Irma a couple of years ago. And we were lucky for, well, lucky in a way. It was the worst hurricane ever in history, but we had cash that moment, so we were able to tell local companies, "Hey, here's some cash, buy the supply, and just repair houses first," because hotels in that case for hurricanes had to wait for insurance, the insurance money, and then they had to repair, and then they had to rehire people that they had laid off. So it took them months, even for a lot of hotels, actually more than a year to reopen. Whereas in our case, with our little rentals, we were able to reopen after 2 months because we didn't have that much staff. So it's I'm with you here because I could witness this with a post-hurricane effect. And the second bit I really find very interesting as well is the advice to say changeovers, maybe make them longer, up to 3 days in your system, and probably tell guests about these steps, about cleaning, and also having made changeovers longer. Could be very interesting things to do and to communicate around. These are great tips. And
Yeah, I mean,
speaking of tips, I think as well on your site you have also all the resources that you indicated.
yeah, so we're gonna have some, material for, some articles that we find interesting that we're gonna load in here, and we're attending a few webinars. So actually, Thibaut, if you accept, we're gonna also load this video here, and we're gonna put some more videos.
Pleasure.
And I think something I found interesting is my colleague Jade went out and interviewed, obviously from home, but some of our partners and clients that have been really impacted, or maybe a bit less impacted, but to tell us how they've experienced the crisis so far. And these are short videos, 10 minutes, but just to know from the perspective of maybe someone doing revenue management or distribution, understanding how they feel about it. So we'll keep doing more. We're going to load it because it's always feeling good to hear someone else who've gone through this and see how they've been dealing with the situation. So we'll be loading more content here.
That's a fantastic initiative. I really like it, being able to hear from others. That's super smart. Nice to hear. And again, all this is available for free right now. People just need to go to. Can you again share the page where people could go to?
Yes, it's ctransparent.com, and maybe we can share a link or something in the description. And the last point maybe Thibaut wanted to share as well is there's opportunities in the crisis, right? I've seen the same thing, after Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, people, gave accommodation to the worker who went there to rebuild the electricity grid. So some of my friends, property managers there, were able to save their year and not maintain their staff thanks to offering this accommodation. There are some opportunities. There are some people who need accommodation because they can't stay with their family. There is obviously hospital workers that can't go back. So there's different things we can do, either pro bono or try to do the minimum we can, but we can already mobilize to be there and maintain a bit of activity. And one also option that we see that people are opting to is looking at midterm rentals. It's not easy in this context, but there's a few midterm rental websites. So we've put like a summary for everyone to see which are the options, and we'll also load that to the website.
That's fantastic. I really like how you thinking about helping property managers, giving them solutions, even if it's to try out something else than short-term rental for a while. That's really fantastic. And maybe to conclude and maybe stop sharing the screen and let's go back on duo mode. All right. And I want to also again thank you so much for your time, because I know that your team is working and like everybody else, and like working from home in different conditions. But we've talked about a lot of global trend or a trend by country, and you showed us this very interesting snapshot of there was one market in Mallorca, but I think obviously that's what your company does, right? Your company is able to give snapshots for every market. So that's something, of course, you can do probably for people who are watching this. I think they can probably contact you to have a demo of some sort, right?
Sure. I mean, our team is fully working. Obviously, we are hit really hard as everyone in the industry. So, we're all taking a lot of efforts to maintain our services. And, we've got two fantastic account managers that are, continuously trying to help their clients. We know in this context, there is not a lot of cash in the market, so we're trying to do some pro bono, or at least sharing some of the data online and trying to do what we can. So in our website, you can book a demo with one of our account managers, and that might be one way you can get familiarized with with our product and what is happening. Hopefully we've got your data already loaded, so we can show you some stuff. If not, we can try to load it. Obviously, we're trying to cut costs as we can, but we'll make everything we can to maintain as much information on the markets and make that available.
Thank you so much, Pierre, for your time and so for trying to support the industry and all these efforts. If
Thanks,
you have anything else to share?
No, I think, it's a tough month for everyone. It's just not us. We're on the front line, but everyone will have to go through this one. So, be safe and take care of your loved ones and your teams. And yeah, we see you on the other side, hopefully.
Yeah, and see you in person very soon, I hope. Thank you so much.
Hopefully as well.
Yes.
Thanks, Theo.